Hello everyone, I'm Ari Babel and I am a licensed therapist. And welcome to another episode of Playing with Psychology. This is an educational and hopefully entertaining series where I discuss video games, do kind of psychosocial analysis, and on the characters and topics found within, and the game itself. I also like to talk about the representation of mental illness in video games and determine whether the game adds or maybe lessens stigma around mental health and the topics surrounding them. Today's game is Mime Scanners. Woo! And it's going to be a little bit different than previous episodes. We're not going to really be focusing on one character per se, because as I was playing the game, I sort of realized that the focus actually isn't on the characters, nor really what maybe mental health disorders you encounter in the game, but really the overall theme of the game. So, yeah, it's going to just be a touch different than usual. Again, if you haven't played Mime Scanners, please go and do so. If not, spoilers ahead. I will also be posting my playthrough, which I did live on Twitch, to the channel, so you can watch it if you want. So again, I recommend you watch a gameplay of it, or really get the game, play it yourself, and then come watch this presentation. So you've been warned, there are spoilers ahead. So, of course, my disclaimer. This presentation is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is not meant to be a formal diagnosis or treatment plan for any real person. Ari Babel does not own the games or the characters represented in this series. All opinions stated in this presentation are mine alone. This is a fan theory guided by psychosocial theories and not game canon. I use the American Psychiatric Association's DSM-5 when determining diagnostic criteria. If you are not in the United States or Canada, the standards for determining diagnostic criteria may be different. Please keep this in mind while viewing. So, a quick overview of the things that we're going to be exploring in this episode, and if any of them obviously are touchy for you, consider this your warning before going forward. We're going to be talking about the darker side of psychology, specifically government-backed psychological torture. Yay! Also, ethics in psychological research and treatment, as well as assessment methods, specifically the Rorschach Blot test. Test. I do that all the time. So, first things first. Before we really get into what's going on, we need to give a little bit of context of the game. So, hopefully you've played the game before, or you at least know enough about it to know about the structure and the constructor. And pictured to the left is a screenshot I took in the game of what I believe to be the structure. So it is a wonderful full blood red moon behind it. So the structure seems to be an inverted pyramid. So the picture is a kind of upside down triangle. So the smallest angle is at the bottom, and then it comes out to have a top, flatter, bigger angles at top. Then above it is the night sky with, as I said, the blood red moon. So yes, the structure and the constructor. So first things first, the structure is a city inside walls which keep out post-apocalyptic creatures. So the game setting is post-calamity, post-apocalyptic, and the structure and the walls around the structure are the only things that seem, or at least we're told, are the only things keeping us safe from the outside. The constructor is the leader of the structure. And it's not really spoken about whether the leader was elected or not. So I'm not sure if there have been other constructors, if this is the only constructor, and whether or not we elected this constructor or not. I get a feeling that we did not. But again, I don't know for sure. And one thing that I will say is throughout the game, the structure, the constructor, and society at large seems to value conformity. And that is a big theme of the game. So, what you do in the game is you are a mind scanner, which is a type of psychiatrist, I believe, given the information that I sort of understand of the game. They do call you doctor, the NPCs. So, yes, I think that mind scanning is definitely how they treat mental illness in the game, and they call you doctor because a mind scanner is the closest thing to a psychiatrist they have. And you mind scan and use a machine to quote unquote treatment, to treat people for the conditions that you find around the game. Picture to the left is a picture of the loudspeaker. You get this loudspeaker when you become a mind scanner, apparently, and you communicate to, the structure communicates to you. The structure's government communicates to you through this loudspeaker. It does seem to be sentient, and it generally pretty nice. Pretty nice loudspeaker. Is nice to you, at least. And this is a screenshot from the game, and it is the first time the speaker speaks to you, and it says to you, "Greetings, Mind Scanner. Your duty is to diagnose and treat anomalous citizens of the structure." So when they say anomalous, they mean many different things. So the Mind Scanner is an instrument used to treat insanity, and I say that in quotes because that is what the game calls multiple different things. From some of the people who do have mental disorders and need help, to people who the structure finds threatening or nonconformist. And yeah, there seems to be no middle ground there. There seems to be all of these people are in the same boat, and the structure wants you to treat all of them the same way. So clearly this is more of a means of enforcing conformity and containing that social construct and contract of conformity, meaning everybody needs to stay in line, the structure wants it so, and people are allowing it to happen. People let it happen. So that is why mind scanners are out in the world, in the structure, and that is their purpose. So immediately, something that came to my mind as I started playing the game was the parallels between mind scanning and brainwashing. And it was very interesting to me because when I thought of these things, I immediately thought of Project Mkultra. So Project Mkultra was a CIA-run program that was fueled by the panic caused from the Cold War. And it began in 1953, ran until about 73, and was uncovered to the public in 75. So one thing before I even start talking about it is much is still not known about the project by the public, because much evidence of it was destroyed when it was found out, because the people behind it went, oh shit. So much is still not very much known by the public about the project. However, what we do know is that the project was about interrogation tactics and mind control, mostly because the CIA was convinced that the Soviets could mind control people. So the project mostly, like I said, it did different types of things too, but it mostly studied LSD as a mind control drug. So basically what they thought is, they being the scientists at the CIA, was that you could wipe out the brain and then reprogram it. And they were saying or thinking that LSD was going to be the vehicle to wipe out the brain. Then once the brain was gone, meaning, and by brain I should clarify, by the ego, the person inside of you was wiped out, that you could then go inside and basically copy paste a whole new person that you could then control. So that was the whole point of using LSD and studying it, and as you can imagine, it did not get the productive results that it wanted. And honestly, it was really bad for many, many reasons, but one of the main reasons it was bad was because it violated human rights. While there were some volunteers for the program, most famous being Robert Hunter from the Grateful Dead, Most people did not. They were using prisoners to practice these experiments on. They were using people who were institutionalized to practice on. And they even abducted people and to experiment on. And they often used LSD, basically put it in somebody's drink or gave it to somebody in some way without them even knowing. And this would happen a lot to other government employees and officials. So, yeah, there was just this complete lack of consent. A lot of the people who were in this study were not asked to be in the study. And that is a big problem. Survivors of it did describe it as torture. Especially, we have accounts of this from, people who were prisoners who were experimented on. Like I said, it was mostly LSD, but there was also other types of torture that included electric shocks and extreme sensory deprivation. Needless to say, many of these methods were fatal. So when I thought of this when playing Mind Scanners because of the complete lack of human rights and the overall we want to mind control people and we want to figure it out. So in Mind Scanners, the structure wants to mind control people and use them for their own gains, much like the structure and the constructor is doing with the protagonist's own daughter. An additional parallel between Mind Scanners and Project Mkultra is that mind scanning itself is, as discussed in the game, mind scanning itself is very experimental. And it is not getting the results, and it is actually harming people. It can actually wipe their personality out completely without replacing it, without ever bringing it back. Like, it is just not good for the people involved. It is not good for the subjects involved. Subjects meaning people who are being subjected to this. And a lot of times people are not asking for it. They are being told, yes, I have to scan your mind. So, and they're not being told the true reason behind it. Pictured to the left is another screenshot from the game. Mona, somebody who's working in the resistance to the constructor, hijacks the news broadcast and talks about what is going on, trying to bring the truth to people. And she says in the picture, the mental health care of our city has turned us into a machine. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. The mental health care of our city has turned into a machine to normalize us all. Mind scanners lack the resources to take proper care of their patients. To me, this is a real tie-in between what Project Mkultra was trying to do and what the structure and the constructor are trying to do. So for me, this really meshes well. So we just spoke about all of these violations that are happening, and I wanted to step in briefly to give a little bit more of an educational perspective of things that have happened since Project Mkultra and how psychological research is done ethically and responsibly now. So we have to talk about the Belmont Report, which was passed in 1976. So the Belmont Report was passed after the Tuskegee syphilis study ended, and all of the atrocities of that study were brought to the light. It actually had nothing to do with Project Mkultra, but the timing of it was around the same time, and I certainly think that a lot of the violations that happened in Project Mkultra would have been addressed in the Belmont Report as well. So what the Belmont Report did was it outlined regulations for ethical research to protect research participants. And it did a lot of things that were kind of like, duh, right? Like things that we think of today as, well, duh, yeah, that's important. And of course we would do this ethically. And of course we would do it this way. So some of the things outlined in the Belmont Report make a lot of sense. Like, all participants must be treated equally. You cannot, give somebody an experimental drug just because. They have to be chosen at random. It cannot be, oh, well, we're secretly just going to give it all to this group of people because we like them more, or we dislike them more, or we value them more, or we don't value them as much. So you can no longer do that. You have to also minimize harm done to participants. So you can't just be like, oh, we're going to just do a research study of, how sad we could get people just cuz, no, no more of that. You have to make sure that no matter what you're doing, it's going to be the least harmful to the people who are in the study. So no more crazy injecting people with LSD or, anything like that. Now, the big thing to come out of the Belmont Report is something called informed consent. Informed consent means that each participant must be made aware of the purpose of the research, as well as the risks of the research and the benefits in participating with this research. There are very few exceptions to this rule. Very few. Each participant must be presented the information of what the study is about, as well as the risks and benefits, in a way they can understand. So no weird medical or legal jargon, mumbo jumbo, all very plainly written. And this is to ensure that participants truly understand what to expect and to be able to make the best decision for themselves. Because sometimes joining a research study, say they're doing a research study on grief and you just lost your mom, maybe that's not the best thing for you. So, it's to make sure that before going into the research that this is going to be okay for you. And each participant is willingly and knowingly volunteering to be a part of the research. The Belmont Report also says that you cannot coerce others or bribe people to be a part of a research project. And that each participant can ask questions about the research at any time, and they can also withdraw from the research at any point in time. It could be the very beginning, it could be the middle, it could be the end, it could be right before you're going to publish your paper. They have the right. And people who cannot give informed consent. The Belmont Report does cover how to handle cases of people who cannot. And an example of this would be a minor. A minor cannot consent to doing research or being a part of research. So Belmont Report would say, well, hey, you got to contact their guardians, you got to do this, you got to that. And also because of how Project Mkultra handled their subjects, meaning that they used, prisoners for it, the Belmont Report also says that you have to be very careful when working with incarcerated people. It outlines the most ethical way to do that. And if you are really interested in that, I do recommend you look up the Belmont Report. You could read it for free online. Another thing that since all of these awful experiments have happened, there are now more governing boards around psychological treatment and research. And I say treatment because that is also a part of Mime Scanners, the game. So I'm going to speak on one of the guiding ethical principles that I practice and have studied, the National Associations of Social Work Code of Ethics, also called NASW for short. And in this code of ethics, informed consent is echoed. We will not treat people if they do not know the benefits and risks of treatment. They are not willing to undergo it, and that even means mandated people. And yeah, we just, informed consent is just so important for research, but also the therapeutic process for working with people in therapy. We also believe in self-determination. We will never make somebody do something that they do not want to do. So in things like Project Mkultra, people were given LSD when they didn't want it or when they were not aware. In the therapeutic process, the ethical board that governs us, we can't do that. Even if we think somebody would really, really do well with maybe, an antidepressant. If somebody says no, it is not within our right to tell them they are wrong or tell them that they should. And we cannot force anybody to do anything because we so strongly believe in self-determination and the fact that you know what's best for you and you have the right to say yes or no. Very strongly believe in that one personally, too. And also, we're partners in the process. That is a very big part of when you are in therapy and getting treatment for these things, which in mind scanners is not so the case. It's you sitting at a machine while I press the buttons. I am the expert and I am do with your brain. In real life, we don't do that and we can't do that. And we believe in being partners in the process. Again, sort of that self-determination thing. We're going to do it together, not doing anything for you. I'm doing something with you. And of course, just being honest and trustworthy is a very big part of our governing principles as well. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to go too much into that one. So something I did want to talk about that was in Mind Scanners that I thought was pretty cool and we could discuss a little bit here was an assessment tool. So in Mind Scanners, when your character first meets somebody, they perform what is called a mind scan, where they put the goggles over the NPC's head and they see these flashing lights or, things in front of them, these images, and they have to describe what they see. And then from there, we have to pick an option of what that means to us, what their description means to us as the mind scanner. Now, this may seem like a thing of fantasy. However, it is a true thing that did happen, that was developed and was used for some time. And it was called the Rorschach I always say ink block instead of ink blot. I'll try that again. The Rorschach ink blot test. So it was a type of psychological test developed by a psychiatrist named Herman Rorschach, and it was developed in 1921, so this is a pretty old measuring tool. In the US, it became very popular, and it was used a lot, mostly in the 60s, as a tool to measure a personality and cognition. And by cognition, I mean how well you can express your thoughts and understand things around you. So perceiving this thing and how well you understand it. So how it works is you see I have a picture on screen of the different traditional ink blots that you would see in the test, and you would see them one at a time. And you would be shown the picture, and then the patient would be asked to describe what they see. And then you'd go, oh, okay, and then on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. And the mental health professional would then take the descriptions and try to describe your personality based within the answers they were given. How is this scored? Well, for a long time, it really didn't have much of a scoring system. But in 1974, there was a scoring system developed, but even still, the testing is quite flawed. There are things like culture and social norms that can affect it, and honestly, I think may impede the therapeutic process due to bias. For example, let's say in one of those ink blots, you say, I see two people holding hands and dancing. And where you're from, maybe, that's perfectly normal. But let's pretend that the psychiatrist that you're working with or the mental health professional that you're working with says believes where, due to their culture or their just values, that dancing is illegal or immoral, and so therefore they see you as a deviant person who breaks the law. That is how they interpret your interpretation. You understand? It's like I'm taking the source, then I'm translating it through myself to get my own answer. And when you simply saw something as simple as two people dancing. And that is why I think this test is very flawed. There's too much that can sort of get in the way that, in my opinion, makes it just not useful nor very scientific. However, for the purposes of mind scanners, I think it was really cool. I think it was really interesting to bring that in, and it just goes to show that even though Mind Scanners is set in a fantasy apocalyptic future, that something so old from the 20s, is still being used. And it also maybe goes to show the very strong influence that the Rorschach ink block test had in, popular culture. So let's talk about representation in the game. To my left here, I have another screenshot from the game. It is a letter from the structure. Throughout the game, you get different letters from the structure telling you basically what to do, or if you did anything wrong, etc., etc. And the letter reads, "Greetings, citizen. As you are well aware, your daughter is now in the care of the structure. She has been placed in quarantine at the Zygnoka Institute, and she has shown signs of a highly contagious mental illness. Details of her condition are classified, but we assure you she is in good hands. For normality and the mind, the structure." So, first things first, it's important to remember that this game is not reality and does not attempt to be realistic in any way. It says so much in the very beginning of the game when you first launch it, and it also states that if you need help, to seek out professional help. So I just wanted to say that I think that that's a great touch at the beginning of the game, just a reminder like, hey, this isn't real, this is pure fantasy, and if you're having problems, if you need help, please go seek out a professional. I really appreciate it when games do stuff like that, because there are games that are try to be far more realistic, that don't have that in there. So yeah, so far, I think that was a nice touch there. So some cases in the game, meaning some of the characters that you meet that you have to mind scan and treat, could have diagnoses from the DSM-5. However, given the overall theme of the game, it's largely unimportant. So we did find some people that had maybe some obsessive compulsive personality disorder, having some brief psychotic episodes. Some people were having delusions. But ultimately, again, because the game is a piece of fantasy and the treatment method is zapping their brains with a mind scanner or, looking in their eyes for symbols, like, clearly it's fantasy, so largely it was unimportant. And the presentations of these mental illnesses, as they were in the game, were not bad, but they weren't actually the purpose of the game. So, that being said, the game is generally benign, as it does not reduce, but it also does not repeat harmful stereotypes or stigma around certain mental illness. So again, there was no when a person, say, was having a brief psychotic episode, there was nothing that made them seem like a stereotype of the negative associations of people who have psychotic episodes. Overall, it's a fun game that pushes your personal values with ethical challenges. Do you treat the person? Do you not treat the person? Do you treat the person that is perfectly normal just because the structure wants you to? Do you do it because you want money? Do you do it because you want to see your daughter? Do you side with people who want to take down the structure at the expense of your daughter? These are kind of the points of the game, and I think that it's just overall a really, really cool game. So that was Mind Scanners, and if you haven't played it yet, which I really hope you have before you've gotten this far in the presentation, I hope you're inspired to play it now. Let me know what you thought of the game and the presentation in the comments below, and I will be I already have, at this point, uploaded my playthrough of the game, so if you want to watch me play through the game, I had some hilarious moments, and I didn't quite get the ending that I wanted. Because I made some mistakes. But otherwise, I thought it was a great game, and I hope you do too. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you around soon in the next episode of Playing with Psychology. Bye, and thank you.